Okay, so we're going to start off our tour of Arlington, Texas in my own neighborhood. Unfortunately, could not get home to do a walking tour myself, but hopefully Google will be enough. So this is Arlington, Texas. It's located in Tarrant County and which is in what's called North Central Texas. Uh, Arlington is actually in a floodplain area, so we get a lot of, as you would guess, flooding here. So there's a lot of drainage infrastructure in place. Um, or in some places, water kind of just sits around. So as you can see, this neighborhood has some middle-sized and large homes. Um, Most of them are built in the 80s and the 90s, which is when this neighborhood was experiencing its biggest increase in population. On this street sign here, you can see this sign that says Lake Interlochen. So that's the homeowners association, and they kind of keep tabs on what's going down in the neighborhood. My mom could complain more about that. Um, got a couple houses for sale, usually throughout the year. There's a little bit of turnover in the neighborhood, but for the most part, I've had the same neighbors my whole life. So yes, we are on a creek. It's called the Village Creek. And so you would say, oh, well, that's why everything is so green around here. Well, this this car was definitely going around in the springtime. You can see there's some more springtime clouds, a little more cumulus. Everything is very green. The trees are nice and lush. So this is definitely a springtime imaging. But Texans are also known for their lawn watering when they're not supposed to. So we've kind of constantly been in a drought for the last 10 to 15 years. But people still like to keep their lawns up. So that's a not so great thing. This is the park that's near my house. This is a walking path that goes along it. As you can see, not many walkers out today. When it gets hot in Texas, everybody tends to stay inside, either in their car or their house, wherever there's air conditioning. Um, so, yeah, the people in this neighborhood, middle income, high income, um, so it's definitely not a bad neighborhood to live in. Go just a little bit farther down. This here is a dam. The village creek is fed into up around near a highway, and so a lot of trash accumulates here in the river because of its proximity to a highway. And usually when I walk across this dam, I'll see trash from almost every fast food restaurant you could think of. So there's definitely a lot of eating fast food in this town in particular. But the Parks Department of Arlington and the Recreation Department, they really like to keep good care of their parks. There's a lot of landscaping going on, a lot of upkeep, and these are all city parks, so it's great to live in a place that cares about its green spaces, which is not so common in all of Texas. All right, let's move to a different part of the city. Okay, so now we're in a little busier part of Arlington, but this is only minutes drive away from the neighborhood that we were just in. So this is one of the main streets called Division Street, and I'm pretty sure it's one of the oldest streets in Arlington because it runs right along the train track, which was one of the first one of the first things to run through this town. So Division Street, as you can see just by looking at the cars, there's some SUVs, there's a lot of trucks, and then I think we might be able to catch up with the tractor that's hanging out up here. So lots of different kinds of cars in Arlington, but lots of trucks and lots of tractors. So I chose this street because this is a very familiar sight to me. I grew up thinking that Arlington was only car dealerships and auto shops, and this is one of the reasons why. Here's four businesses in a row that are all used car dealerships. And I just remember thinking when I was younger, I have got to get out of here and see the world. Also on this street, there's a lot of motels, a lot of hourly rate motels, and so I never really found that to be a very appealing part of my town. Another auto sales store, another auto sales, more car sales here. Here's that tractor we wanted to catch up with. And as you can see, just as I kind of drive along here, the landscape is extremely flat in Texas. Like I said, we're kind of in a hilly area, but not really. It's mostly flat. So that means that we get all sunlight all day, which sometimes can be nice, but in the summertime it can be pretty brutal. You also notice that you don't see any skyscrapers, even though Arlington is a town with a population of 300,000 people. Our downtown is very small, and that it was never meant to be a city. So it's kind of just grown in the suburb realm of things and in the apartment realm of things, but there's no big business center. And also looking at the roads, you can see that everything's pretty well kept. You don't see any potholes. Luckily, we don't get a lot of ice here or snow, and everything's really well marked. So Arlington definitely keeps care of its roads, and actually it's kind of a trademark of Texas, is that it really likes to keep up its highways and its roads. Okay, now I'm going to take you into the last part of Arlington that I want to showcase. Okay, so the last street that I wanted to show you is the main street of Arlington. So this is one of the first streets that the town ever had. And it's mainly very sleepy, very clean. Usually you'd expect a more bustling downtown. But over here, I think that because Arlington grew so much, the downtown kind of became irrelevant, so to speak, because there was so much happening in so many other places that Main Street kind of fizzled. But we have a 6-truck fire station here, which is quite a lot of trucks for a town of 300,000. Mainly on this street, it's small, locally owned businesses that, in my experience being home, usually aren't open, but are sometimes open. So the real estate situation is unclear. We go a little further down the road. You can probably tell by the design of the buildings that a lot of it was built in the 70s and the 80s, but with a lot of care taken for its landscape design. And I'm happy to see here there's even some xeriscaping going on, some agave plants and yucca, so that's good for the drought that we are ever in. And then the main street has a lot of the culture of Arlington, which isn't much, but here we have Theater Arlington. So they put on plays and have theater classes there. There's a dance studio up the way, Miss Percy's. That's where I took my tap class, just up here. And here's some sewing shops. And there's a woman who's very excited to be seen by the Google car. Maybe doing some free advertising for Arlington Sewing Machine. And if you look at the streets, I mean, this is in the middle of the day, and most of the parking is open down on this end. So it's not so busy. Pretty sleepy downtown. And then as you get to the end of the street, there's a small museum called the Arlington Museum of Art just here. It's 1-story, 2-story building. and I can attest to its smallness inside. And then the last place I want to show you here in Arlington is kind of a new addition in the last 5 years, which really has kind of set the standard for Arlington culture. So this is called Levitt Pavilion. And what it is an outdoor concert space. Here's the stage over here, and here's the seating. People bring their blankets and their chairs. And musicians come here in the summertime almost every night. In fact, the B-52s were here last summer, which is a pretty big deal. So it's seeing something here, which is great. Here's City Hall. The architecture is pretty outdated, but I guess everything will be one day or another. And the last thing I wanted to touch on, or not the last thing, but another thing I wanted to touch on is that Arlington has a lot of construction going on in it, especially around the university. That's where we are right now. We're around University of Texas at Arlington. And there's a lot of apartment buildings going up, parking garages. There's a new library being built just for the city, not for the school. And so I think that it's experiencing a little bit of a boost in the economy right now because I've seen a lot of construction, especially for young people and new families, considering the presence of apartment buildings. So there's outdoor spaces, there's benches and little parks everywhere. And then the last thing I wanted to just touch on real briefly, Texas or Arlington is a pretty religious town, definitely not the most religious town in the South, but there's a lot of First Baptists here. That's what this church is, this beautiful brick church. And the churches are so big that they sometimes have to open up extension sites nearby. Oops, sorry. Let me just get back to where I was. Right, so here's the church, and then over here is the extension site where people will witness it live streamed, witness the service live streamed, because it fills up so much in the church because it's such a popular religion here. So that is Arlington in a nutshell. And it's a medium size, actually a pretty large suburban town. But there's a few public spaces for our use. But in general, the activity level in Arlington is pretty quiet, pretty sleepy town, save for the car dealerships that you saw earlier. Those are usually pretty busy. Anyway, the infrastructure is moderately strong here. The roads are in good shape. The railroad is always running. The streetlights are always on. And I'd say that the condition of the public spaces that we have is pretty moderate as well. They could always stand to be updated, but they're functioning and useful. So it's a pretty good place to live, especially for beginning families. Okay, well, thank you for watching my tour of Arlington. I hope you enjoyed it. Looks like there's about to be a spring storm.